In the heart of Europe, a storm is brewing. Once hailed as a beacon of post-communist success, Hungary now stands at odds with the European Union. From Brussels to Budapest, tensions are rising, and the very foundations of European unity are being tested. What turned this promising partnership into a bitter struggle? How did Hungary go from EU poster child to problem child? The answers lie in a tale of clashing ideologies, broken promises, and a power struggle that threatens to reshape the continent. In 2004, Hungary joined the European Union with high expectations. The country, emerging from its communist past, saw EU membership as a pathway to prosperity and integration with the West. Hungary's journey towards EU membership began even earlier, during the communist era, when the country was known as the cheerful barracks in the socialist camp, due to its limited freedoms compared to other Eastern Bloc nations. This unique position allowed Hungary to begin its rapprochement with the EU, then still the European Economic Community, earlier than many of its neighbours. For years after joining, Hungary benefited significantly from EU structural assistance, receiving more funds than it contributed. In 2021 alone, Hungary contributed €1.7 billion to the EU budget, while receiving €6 billion in return. This financial support was crucial for Hungary's development, with funds initially focused on infrastructure projects and later expanding to areas such as ecology, climate protection, energy transition, and civil society development. The EU's investment in Hungary wasn't just financial. Through programs like FAIR, Poland and Hungary, assistance for restructuring their economies, launched in 1989, the EU aimed to prepare Hungary for integration by providing training and technical assistance in crucial areas such as finance, justice, and home affairs. The goal was to create institutions and political systems that aligned with the liberal West, fostering a shared set of values and governance practices across the expanded Union. Hungary's accession to the EU was not without its complexities. In 2003, a referendum on EU membership saw only 45.6% of eligible voters participate, with 83.6% of those voting in favour. This low turnout suggested a certain ambivalence among the Hungarian population, with many believing the outcome was predetermined. Despite this, the country moved forward with its EU integration, driven largely by a post-communist technocratic elite that shared close ties with EU officials. The honeymoon period, however, didn't last long. The first signs of strain appeared in 2008, when Hungary faced the threat of sovereign default under the socialist government of Ferenc Gyurcsány. The EU, along with the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, came to Hungary's aid with a rescue package of over €25 billion. This assistance came with strict austerity measures that severely impacted the already struggling Hungarian population, sowing seeds of discontent. The true turning point came in 2010 with the election of Viktor Orban and his conservative Fidesz party. Orban's victory, secured with a two-thirds majority, marked the beginning of a new era in Hungary's relationship with the EU. Unlike some other European right-wing parties that embraced the EU's pro-globalization agenda, Orban challenged the concept of an ever-closer union. He emphasized conservative views on family, national sovereignty, and Hungarian culture, adopting a Hungary-first approach that would come to define his governance style. One of Orban's first moves was to terminate the rescue agreement with the EU and IMF, beginning to repay the aid received. This action signaled Hungary's desire for greater autonomy and set the stage for future conflicts with the EU. The ideological shift under Orban's leadership didn't sit well with EU leadership, who initially believed that he would not follow through on his election promises. The first serious infringement proceedings against Hungary occurred in 2012, focusing on forced personnel changes within state institutions. While these changes violated the rule of law from the EU's perspective, the Hungarian government viewed them as necessary to replace Socialist Party supporters in key positions. This disagreement highlighted the growing divergence between Hungary's interpretation of national sovereignty and the EU's expectations of its member states. The rift widened significantly in 2015, when Hungary, along with other Visegrad 4 countries, Poland, Czech Republic, and Slovakia, opposed the EU's plan to resettle migrants from the Middle East. This crisis, primarily driven by conflicts in Syria and other parts of the Middle East, saw an influx of refugees into Europe. While countries like Germany advocated for a collective EU response, Orban argued that sovereign states should have the ultimate say in who resides within their borders. This stance directly challenged the EU's collective approach to the migrant crisis and highlighted the growing divide between Eastern and Western EU members on issues of immigration and national sovereignty. Since then, the European Commission has referred numerous cases against Hungary to the European Court of Justice, ECJ. These legal battles have become symbolic, touching on core issues of Hungarian government policy and national sovereignty. Disputes have ranged from laws requiring NGOs to disclose foreign funding sources to Hungary's refusal to accept migrants and its treatment of asylum seekers. In 2021, Hungary faced legal action for banning the portrayal of homosexuality or sex reassignment to minors, which the Commission viewed as a violation of LGBT rights. Beyond specific policy disagreements, Hungary has levelled a more fundamental criticism at the ECJ. The Hungarian government argues that the EU uses the court as an instrument to amend original EU treaties, creating new standards that no country explicitly agreed to. This criticism was particularly prominent in the case of the rule of law mechanism in 2022, which allowed the Commission to withhold funds from states deemed not to be upholding the rule of law. The deterioration of Hungary's relationship with the EU reached a new low in 2022, when the European Parliament declared that Hungary could no longer be considered a formal democracy. Instead, it classified Hungary as a hybrid regime of electoral autocracy, where European values are consistently under threat. This unprecedented move was accompanied by a proposal to suspend €7.5 billion in funding to Hungary over corruption and democratic backsliding concerns. Hungary's increasing alignment with Russia, Turkey, and far-right figures in the US has further isolated it within the EU. Orban's willingness to maintain close ties with Russia, including continuing to pay for Russian gas in rubles even after the invasion of Ukraine, has particularly soured relations with other EU member states. This geopolitical positioning has raised concerns about Hungary's commitment to EU solidarity and its role as a potential Trojan horse for Russian influence within the bloc. Under Orban's leadership, Hungary has seen increasing politicization of the media, judiciary, and academia. The rights of migrants, the LGBTQ community, and women have often been rolled back, contradicting EU values of inclusivity and equality. Early in the COVID-19 pandemic, Orban used the state of emergency to consolidate his power further, raising alarms about the erosion of democratic checks and balances. The case of Hungary raises troubling questions about the EU's ability to maintain democratic standards among its members. Despite the rigorous Copenhagen criteria that candidates must meet to join the EU, Hungary's democratic backsliding demonstrates that EU membership alone does not guarantee the preservation of democratic values. This realization has implications for current EU candidate countries, including Ukraine, Moldova, and Balkan states, which are grappling with their own challenges related to corruption and external influences. The EU's patience with Hungary is wearing thin. There are growing calls for more forceful action, including the potential use of Article 7, the EU's nuclear option, that could strip Hungary of its voting rights in the bloc. This drastic measure, once considered unthinkable, is now being seriously discussed as a potential response to Hungary's continued defiance of EU values and its attempts to block crucial decisions, such as financial aid to Ukraine. The situation has reached a critical point where EU leaders are reportedly fed up with Orban's tactics. The Hungarian Prime Minister's repeated use of vetoes to extract concessions from the EU has pushed other member states to consider more drastic measures. The potential invocation of Article 7 reflects the EU's growing determination to protect its core values and maintain unity in the face of external threats, particularly in light of Russia's aggression against Ukraine. However, the use of Article 7 is not without its complications. Some Central and Eastern European countries are wary of setting a precedent that could be used against them in the future over rule of law issues. This hesitation reflects the complex dynamics within the EU, where concerns about national sovereignty often clash with the bloc's collective interests and values. As the situation evolves, the EU faces a delicate balancing act. On one hand, there's a need to take a firm stance against democratic backsliding and protect the bloc's fundamental values. On the other hand, completely isolating Hungary could strengthen Orban's appeal domestically and among populist nationalist movements abroad. The EU must also consider the potential economic consequences of its actions, given Hungary's deep economic integration with the bloc, particularly its close ties with Germany. The outcome of this conflict will have far-reaching implications not just for Hungary and the EU, but for the future of democracy in Europe and beyond. It serves as a stark reminder that the work of building and maintaining democratic institutions is never truly finished, even within the supposedly stable confines of the European Union.